The White House press briefing room was electric. Cameras clicked, lights blazed, and reporters sat upright in anticipation. Ever since Donald J. Trump had reclaimed the presidency, the dynamic inside the media circle had changed. But no one expected what was coming that Tuesday morning. The usually composed, sharply dressed Karoline Leavitt walked up to the podium with a demeanor different from her usual professional calm. Her eyes sparkled, not with fury, but with a kind of unshakable resolve. Karoline, the youngest ever White House press secretary, had quickly earned a reputation for being smart, direct, and unflinchingly loyal to the administration. She rarely got personal, but something had changed. Over the weekend, Ilhan Omar, the representative from Minnesota's 5th District, had gone on a viral tirade during an MSNBC segment, accusing the Trump administration of racist targeting, policy sabotage, and manipulating intelligence data to serve political vendettas. Normally, the administration would respond with a carefully worded statement. But not this time. Karoline opened the folder on the podium and cleared her throat. Good morning. Before I take any questions, I have a statement to make regarding Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's recent media appearances. It is time for the American people to hear the full truth, backed by facts, not slogans, not media spin, and certainly not half-truths designed to deflect from accountability. A hush fell over the room. The CNN correspondent lowered his coffee. Fox News leaned in. Even the usually dismissive NPR reporter looked intrigued. Karoline continued, her tone cool but razor-sharp. For years, Congresswoman Omar has painted herself as a victim of xenophobia, of Islamophobia, of systemic oppression. But behind that narrative lies a troubling history of ethical violations, foreign influence questions, and policy hypocrisy that the media has conveniently ignored. Until now. The room was now silent, dead silent. She held up a thick manila folder. What I have here are publicly available documents, compiled with the assistance of our legal team, whistleblower testimony, and archived interviews. And I am about to take you through them, line by line, because the American people deserve transparency. A reporter tried to interrupt, but Karoline held up her hand. This isn't a political takedown. This is an accountability session. She clicked a remote and a large screen behind her lit up with the heading, Ilhan Omar, a timeline of troubling allegations. The first slide showed a 2019 report by the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board. Let's begin here, Karoline said. In 2019, Representative Omar was ordered to repay thousands of dollars in campaign funds she illegally used for personal travel and out-of-state tax filings. She claimed it was an oversight, but the pattern didn't end there. The next slide showed screenshots of marriage certificates, immigration filings, and financial disclosure. Multiple investigations have raised serious questions about the legitimacy of her marital history, including allegations and proven but heavily documented that she married her own brother to skirt immigration laws. Now, let me be clear, we're not making legal conclusions. But these questions remain unanswered to this day, and she has stonewalled every inquiry. Gasps echoed through the press room. Even the progressive-leaning outlets knew this wasn't conspiracy talk, it was sourced, linked, and publicly available data. Karoline didn't flinch. And while she lectures this administration about foreign policy corruption, she conveniently omits her own troubling connections to groups with ties to foreign entities hostile to the United States, including documented meetings with officials from regimes known for supporting anti-American ideologies. A reporter stood up. Karoline, are you suggesting criminal conduct? Karoline shot him a look. I'm suggesting the American people deserve answers. And perhaps finally Congress should take a long, hard look at one of its own. The briefing was over in under 20 minutes, but the firestorm had only just begun. By noon, #OmarExposed was trending on X. Conservative pundits hailed Karoline's takedown as historic. Even some moderate Democrats privately admitted she had struck a nerve. But the biggest reaction came from Ilhan Omar herself. Within the hour, she posted a defiant video on social media. This is a witch hunt, plain and simple. The Trump administration is desperate to silence women of color. I will not be intimidated. But Karoline wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. She had more, much more. The next morning, Karoline Leavitt's name was plastered across every major headline. Leavitt drops bombshell, read the New York Post. Press secretary declares war on Omar, said The Hill. Even Politico, typically wary of sensationalism, ran a rare front-page editorial. Ilhan Omar faces mounting scrutiny after White House briefing. Inside the White House, Karoline sifted through a second stack of papers at her desk in the West Wing. There were still more revelations to come, and she knew this next round wouldn't just be uncomfortable for Omar. It could lead to formal congressional hearings. That afternoon, Karoline appeared on Hannity, seated confidently across from the conservative host in a sleek navy blue blazer. Sean Hannity leaned in, eager for the next hit. Karoline, what you laid out yesterday was nothing short of explosive. Are you saying Representative Omar has been operating with impunity while the media turned a blind eye? Karoline didn't hesitate. Sean, what I'm saying is this: Representative Omar has benefited from a shield, one built by political correctness, media bias, and the fear of being labeled. But facts don't have a political identity. And when someone in public office uses their position to enrich themselves, dodge accountability, or align with hostile foreign interests, it's our duty to speak up no matter who they are. She paused, then continued. Let me give you an example we didn't even touch yesterday. Omar has, for years, funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars to her now husband Tim Minett's political consulting firm. That's not speculation, it's documented in FEC filings. In 2020 alone, over $2.7 million went from her campaign to his company. Sean blinked. Wait, are you telling me she paid her husband millions from her campaign account? Karoline nodded. That's correct. While her constituents struggled during the pandemic, while small businesses in Minneapolis were boarded up, her campaign was sending checks to her partner's firm. And let's not forget, she once said publicly that money in politics is corrupt. But apparently, the rules don't apply when the dollars flow into your own household. The clip went viral overnight. Independent voters started tweeting links to the documents. Reddit threads broke it down line by line. YouTube channels covering political corruption picked up the story, each one citing the receipts Karoline had aired. But behind the scenes, the tension was boiling. Ilhan Omar's staff released a counter-statement the next morning. Representative Omar has always complied with all campaign finance regulations. These attacks are not about facts, they are about race, religion, and silencing powerful women. Karoline didn't flinch. She walked into the Thursday morning press briefing with an even thicker folder than before. Yesterday, Congresswoman Omar accused us of racism and religious bias, Karoline began. Let me make something crystal clear, this is not about identity. This is about integrity. She held up a page, a redacted copy of a classified diplomatic cable. In 2021, Representative Omar met with representatives from the government of Qatar without disclosing the meeting. Our intelligence partners flagged the visit due to Qatar's funding of certain extremist groups. And though the content of the meeting remains classified, the fact that she never disclosed it violates basic congressional transparency protocols. The room gasped. A Reuters journalist jumped to her feet. Karoline, are you accusing her of colluding with a foreign power? Karoline didn't miss a beat. We are saying there is a pattern of behavior here, a repeated disregard for protocol, a lack of transparency, and highly questionable associations that deserve a full investigation. Congress is not above scrutiny. The press was stunned. Karoline's approval among conservatives surged. Even moderates began murmuring about a potential ethics inquiry. And whispers floated around Capitol Hill, was it time to reevaluate Omar's position on the House Foreign Affairs Committee? In Minnesota's 5th District, cracks were forming. Some local leaders quietly admitted they were concerned about the attention. A Minneapolis pastor, once a vocal Omar supporter, tweeted, "If even 20% of what Karoline Leavitt is saying is true, we need answers." And Karoline wasn't done yet. That night, she appeared on the Ingram Angle, where Laura Ingram posed the million-dollar question, are we witnessing the political downfall of Ilhan Omar? Karoline stared into the camera. I'm not here to bring down a political opponent. I'm here to stand up for the truth. And the truth doesn't care about party lines. It's time America woke up. The line went viral. It was clipped, shared, quoted. By the end of the night, even Democrats couldn't deny it. Karoline had struck a chord. And Omar? She was running out of time. The situation escalated faster than anyone had predicted. By Friday, a new development hit Washington like a freight train. A former Omar staffer, now turned whistleblower, contacted a major news outlet. The whistleblower, known only as Maya, requested anonymity but provided documentation to back up her claims. What she had to say sent shockwaves through the political establishment. I worked in Congresswoman Omar's office for nearly 2 years, Maya said in an exclusive interview with the Daily Caller. I joined because I believed in her message. But what I saw behind closed doors was nothing like the image she presented to the public. Karoline Leavitt had already received a tip from the source 2 days earlier. She had been quietly working with the Department of Justice to verify the information. Now that it was public, Karoline was ready to use it. During a nationally televised press conference, she walked calmly to the podium, folder in hand, as dozens of reporters leaned forward, already buzzing about Maya's interview. Ladies and gentlemen, Karoline began, today we're not dealing in speculation. We are dealing in testimony. She held up a sworn affidavit. This document, obtained under federal protection, confirms that Representative Ilhan Omar's office coordinated with representatives from at least 2 foreign lobbying organizations. Without registering those contacts under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. One of them has known ties to Turkey's authoritarian regime. There were audible gasps in the room. She continued, according to the whistleblower, Congresswoman Omar's office not only hosted back-channel meetings with these groups but also received research and policy suggestions, some of which were almost directly copied into proposed legislation. These were not think tank briefings. These were covert lobbying efforts dressed up as international cooperation. A reporter from the Washington Post nervously raised her hand. Karoline, are there legal implications here? Karoline paused. I'm not a prosecutor. But I will say this, FARA violations carry serious penalties. And these allegations raise legitimate concerns about national security and foreign influence within Congress. The press conference went viral within minutes. #OmarResign and #Karoline exposes truth began trending on X. Major news outlets could no longer bury the story. Even CNN ran a segment titled, Mounting Evidence Prompts Ethics Questions Around Ilhan Omar. Within 24 hours, Congress was in uproar. House Minority Leader Steve Scalise called for a formal ethics investigation. Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, trying to stay measured, issued a statement, the American people deserve answers. We support transparency and accountability in all branches of government. Even some House Democrats were noticeably quiet. But Karoline wasn't celebrating, she was preparing. She knew Omar would go on the offensive soon, and sure enough, she did. In an emergency town hall held in Minneapolis, Ilhan Omar stood in front of a crowd of supporters visibly rattled but defiant. This is a coordinated smear campaign, she said. They are afraid of strong women of color in positions of power. But I will not back down. I have fought too hard for my community to be silenced by right-wing conspiracy theories. Cheers erupted. But not everyone in the audience clapped. A few community members stood in the back with folded arms, whispering. Even among her base, doubts were beginning to surface. Karoline, watching the live stream from the White House, knew something Omar didn't. The final blow hadn't landed yet. That night, Karoline released a set of declassified emails obtained through a lawful FOIA request, showing that Omar had been warned by her own staff about the potential legal risk of not disclosing certain meetings with foreign officials. In one of the emails, her former chief of staff wrote, Congresswoman, we need to register this meeting under FARA. We cannot keep pushing the boundaries. It's getting risky. Omar replied, We'll handle the optics. Don't worry. That email was the straw that broke the camel's back. The next morning, calls for an ethics inquiry turned into calls for resignation. On Capitol Hill, lines were being drawn. Several Democrats distanced themselves publicly. If these documents are accurate, it's deeply troubling, said Representative Jared Golden of Maine. We need answers. No exceptions. In Minnesota, local newspapers began publishing op-eds asking if the Congresswoman had lost touch with her district. And Karoline? She released a statement simply saying, This isn't personal. It's about preserving the integrity of the institutions that serve the American people. Congress is not above the law. She didn't need to say more. She had already done what no one else had dared. She had cracked the shield and the truth was pouring out. The mood on Capitol Hill was unmistakable, something seismic had shifted. What began as a routine press briefing by Karoline Leavitt had spiraled into a political earthquake. The Democratic Party, known for circling the wagons around its members, was now eerily silent on Omar. Even members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Omar's traditional allies, were avoiding the cameras. Back in the White House, Karoline was calm but focused. She had received a confidential message from a key House Democrat, one who wanted to remain anonymous but was deeply troubled by what he called a betrayal of the American people's trust. He had seen the documents. He had read the whistleblower's affidavit. And he told Karoline plainly, if this hits the House Ethics Committee floor with bipartisan support, Ilhan's done. Meanwhile, the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability announced they were launching a preliminary inquiry. This was no longer just a media frenzy, it was formal. The White House received word that subpoenas were being prepared. Karoline, never one to rest, coordinated with the legal team to ensure full transparency. She released a statement. "We welcome any investigation that upholds the rule of law and restores faith in government. No member of Congress should be untouchable." In the days that followed, more pieces of the puzzle emerged. A classified intelligence report, redacted but damning, surfaced through official channels. It detailed how certain policy language in Omar's proposed foreign aid amendments bore remarkable similarity to internal memos from foreign lobbyists operating out of Istanbul and Doha. The language had never been used in U.S. legislation before. It was specific. Too specific. News outlets that had once dismissed Karoline's press conference as political theater were now scrambling to update their coverage. MSNBC ran a 20-minute segment titled, "Did We Ignore Red Flags?" The Washington Post editorial board, long critical of the Trump administration, penned a rare statement of agreement. Regardless of party, ethical governance must be non-negotiable. But the final blow came not from Karoline nor from the press. It came from Omar's own constituents. A group of Somali-American community leaders from Minneapolis held a press conference of their own. The leader, a respected imam and civic figure, stood solemnly in front of microphones. "We believed in Ilhan Omar because she was one of us. But now we must ask, has she used our trust for her own gain? These allegations are serious. And silence is not a defense." That moment broke through the partisan noise. For the first time, Ilhan Omar's home base was publicly questioning her. And Karoline? She continued her work, measured, professional, and relentlessly honest. She wasn't gloating. She wasn't bragging. She had made it clear from the start, this wasn't personal. This was about protecting democracy. On the Monday following the community press conference, Omar gave her first major interview since the scandal broke. Sitting down with a friendly journalist on PBS, she appeared exhausted but still defiant. "We are watching history repeat itself," she said. "I'm being targeted because I dare to speak truth to power." But the interviewer didn't let her off easy. "Congresswoman, with all due respect, is a truth to power or deflection from accountability?" Omar stumbled. That's not fair. These are coordinated attacks. But they're supported by evidence," the host pressed. "Email trails, affidavits, FEC filings." "Are you saying they're all fabricated?" Omar paused. "I'm saying the motivations behind them are deeply political." It was a weak answer, and America could see it. Across the country, approval polls began to shift. Omar's favorability, once strong among young voters, dropped 15 points in less than a week. Editorial boards across the political spectrum called for a full ethics probe. And in the White House, Karoline prepared one final briefing. Not to grandstand, not to celebrate, but to lay out a timeline for what the administration would recommend: a bipartisan ethics investigation, public hearings, and a formal push for transparency reforms in congressional conduct. She addressed the nation in prime time. "This isn't about one individual," she said. "This is about the integrity of the American system. When our representatives serve foreign interests over the people who elected them, we don't just have a scandal, we have a crisis of trust. But we also have a chance to rebuild that trust. And that starts with truth." The broadcast was watched by over 40 million Americans. The next morning, Omar's office issued a short, stark statement. "The Congresswoman will cooperate with the Ethics Committee. She denies all wrongdoing." But behind closed doors, her staff was already divided. Resignation rumors began to swirl. Karoline Leavitt had not just exposed one politician. She had exposed a system that had grown too comfortable with secrets. And the American people were paying attention. It was a crisp Friday morning in Washington, D.C. The U.S. Capitol dome stood stoically against the gray sky, but inside, tensions were electric. Ilhan Omar walked briskly through the halls of Congress, cameras flashing, staff trailing behind her. She didn't speak. Her expression was grim, eyes fixed forward. Rumors had erupted the night before that she would either announce her resignation or face formal removal proceedings under pressure from both parties. Karoline Leavitt, meanwhile, remained composed. She had done her part. She didn't need to gloat. Her focus was now on the bigger picture, legislative reform. But America was glued to the live broadcast as Ilhan Omar stepped up to the podium that afternoon. Surrounded by American flags, with her staff looking on silently, she adjusted the microphone and began. "Over the past few weeks, my office and I have been the subject of relentless attacks, many politically motivated, some rooted in bad faith. but I acknowledge that questions have been raised that demand answers. The people of Minnesota's 5th District deserve transparency. She paused. After discussions with party leadership and my own family, I have decided to step back and allow the process to unfold without distraction. Therefore, I will not be seeking re-election this fall, and I am temporarily stepping down from my committee assignments. The room erupted in gasps. It wasn't a resignation, but it was close. The decision sent shockwaves across the political world. Some supporters wept. Others were quietly relieved. But one thing was clear: Omar's political power had been fractured. And in the background of it all, Karoline Leavitt had cemented her place as a rising star in American politics. Over the weekend, editorial after editorial praised her resolve and meticulous handling of the situation. The Wall Street Journal wrote, "Karoline Leavitt just gave Washington a masterclass in leadership, firm, fair, and fearless." Even the New York Times, which had once dismissed her as a mouthpiece, admitted. While her politics may be polarizing, her presentation of evidence and insistence on accountability struck a chord with millions. The White House was flooded with letters and calls of support. Veterans, small business owners, and working-class families all wrote in to say thank you. One handwritten note from a retired Marine simply read, "We need more Karolines in this country." In a televised interview on Meet the Press, Karoline appeared more stateswoman than press secretary. When asked if she thought Omar should have resigned completely, she answered with grace, "That's for her and her constituents to decide. My job was never to destroy someone, it was to expose facts and uphold truth. I believe we've done that. Now it's time to restore trust and get back to serving the American people." It was a mic drop moment, not because of bravado, but because of clarity. By the numbers, the impact was undeniable. Over 120 million Americans had seen or read Karoline's statements. Polls showed a 70% approval rating of how she handled the situation, including from 42% of registered Democrats. A bipartisan ethics reform bill, nicknamed the Leavitt Transparency Act, was introduced in the House to tighten rules on foreign lobbying and financial disclosures. Even former presidents and senior statesmen began quietly praising her. One anonymous Democratic senator told a reporter, "I don't agree with her politics, but that woman has guts." Back in New Hampshire, Karoline's hometown celebrated her return that weekend with a small parade and a town hall event. She stood on a modest stage in front of a crowd of farmers, students, and veterans and delivered a humble message. "I'm not here because I wanted the spotlight. I'm here because the truth still matters in this country. And as long as I have a voice, I'll use it to protect that truth." The crowd rose to their feet in applause. Ilhan Omar would remain in office for the time being, but her influence was diminished. Her name was now a cautionary tale. Karoline Leavitt's rise, however, was only just beginning. She had done the impossible, exposed corruption without grandstanding, defended the truth without losing her humanity, and reminded the nation that accountability wasn't a partisan issue. It was an American one. And as the sun set over the Capitol, a new era was beginning. One where truth wasn't something to fear, but something to fight for.